hours of flying had taken us halfway across the world by the time we first set eyes on our objective. It's a mountain almost everybody knows. Looming nearly 20,000 feet over the East African savanna stands the highest freestanding mountain in the world. Home to a diversity of ecosystems, from the tropical rainforest biomes to alpine desert zones just miles apart. Few other mountains on Earth can claim to have as much influence on the surrounding civilizations and wildlife as Mount Kilimanjaro. Being the tallest mountain in Africa, Kilimanjaro is one of the 7 summits. Yet unlike many of the others, the journey to the summit is not exclusive to those with mountaineering backgrounds. While tall, Kilimanjaro's summit is reached through an extensive series of trails, journeying through the many biomes that make the trip truly unique. If you have never climbed one of the 7 summits before, this is the place to start. There are 2 major climbing seasons to shoot for, June through October and January through March. But as mentioned, Kilimanjaro is a popular hiking destination, and ideal weather conditions will inevitably draw the most crowds. We chose another option, to climb the mountain in the middle of the rainy season in November. As for routes, Kilimanjaro has many. Machame is the most popular, being a relatively direct hike of typically 6 days. Baranco is a good option for the rainy season, as there are huts to stay in along the way, but we had our eye on another route. Our route begins deep in the rainforest, slowly wrapping around the volcanic alpine fields of Shira Plateau on the western side of the mountain. It's called Lemosho, and while typically longer at about 6 to 8 days, it has become an increasingly favored choice for the incredible opportunity it provides to see contrasting ecosystems as you move from camp to camp. On Mount Kilimanjaro, all groups travel with guides. Unlike many of the other 7 summits, which stand far from major centers of population, Kilimanjaro has significant population centers all around it, and it is closely intertwined with the local economy. Our flight arrived in Moshi, a city located on the southern foot of the mountain. Here we would debrief with our team, explore the city, and prepare for the coming days. The next day, we traveled to the Lemosho Gate to set off towards our first camp. Here, low on the mountain, the rain was constant throughout the day. A pair of gaiters was a must to move through the muddy trails within the rainforest. After a few hours, we arrived at Forest Camp, where our team porters had arrived already and set up the camp. A key focus of climbing Kilimanjaro is acclimatization to the higher altitudes. That's a major reason why success rate of climbers is higher on the Lemosho route than the more direct routes. More days equals more acclimatization, which means a greater chance of avoiding altitude sickness on summit day. Eating enough food is also key to good acclimatization. Simply put, your body needs calories to make the changes to acclimatize. As many will discover on their first high altitude experience, altitude and physical exertion reduce appetite, so eating enough calories can become challenging. This is another reason Kilimanjaro is a great first high altitude hike. Most guided groups will have a chef on the team who will provide regular, well-prepared meals at each camp. The following day, we set out for Shira 1, a camp located on the western side of the Shira Plateau. This plateau is actually believed to be the collapsed filled caldera of an ancient cone of Kilimanjaro. This part of the mountain last erupted 2 million years ago and is the oldest of the 3 volcanic cones on the mountain. The caldera rim has since eroded away, forming the plateau. This is the first camp where the mountain becomes visible, and now above the forest at 11,480 feet, the rain began to let up in the evenings. Here, instead of the towering canopy of the rainforest, we found low-growing woody alpine vegetation scattered about ancient volcanic rock. While mostly frequented by birds, the plateau has been known to see buffalo and even elephants on rare occasion. The following day, we hiked from Shira 1 to Shira 2, crossing the plateau without gaining much elevation. This was one of the shorter days on the trip, with only a couple hours of hiking. Having a book to read around camp helps to pass the time, especially with the rain Just above this would be where the Mashame route intersects and follows the same trail for the remainder of the hike. By this time, we had noticed a pattern to the weather. Every day would begin with clear skies and sun, only for clouds and rain to set in around 10 a.m. Rain would continue throughout the day until about 5 or 6 p.m., when the clouds would descend below us and spare us from rain until later in the night. We used this to our advantage, setting out early in the morning with the intention of arriving at camp by early to midday. From Shira 2, we ascended to Lava Tower at just above 15,000 feet before descending down the other side to Baranco Camp at just over 12,000 feet. This is a great acclimatization day because getting to the high altitude during the day gives the body the exposure it needs to trigger physiologic changes for acclimatization, while resting at lower altitudes allows the body to implement those changes in a more favorable aerobic environment at rest. Lava Tower is somewhat of a unique formation on the mountain. It is believed to have formed long ago when lava venting out of the mountain at this location cooled, causing a pileup of volcanic rock that eventually formed the tower. Unfortunately, concerns about its stability precludes this tower from being climbed today. Years ago, it was often climbed for a viewpoint, being a short scramble off the main trail. As we descended into Baranco Camp, the vegetation becomes much more dense. Baranco Camp is formed in an amphitheater-like feature of the mountain that seems to trap moisture as the clouds rise up the south base of the mountain. Several waterfalls, creeks, and small ponds scatter the area. Birds and mice are abundant around camp. This is also where the Umbwe route connects, often used by porters as a resupply from the town below. From camp, the Baranco Wall dominates the view to the east. This wall is believed to be formed by a landslide occurring a few 100,000 years ago, around the time the mountain last erupted. Those continuing from Baranco Camp will next ascend this wall. As we approached the wall the following day, the trail up became evident. It may look extremely steep, but this is actually a relatively straightforward scramble. I would rate it at a low class 3 scramble in a few sections, with mostly regular hiking in between. To date, there have been no fatalities on this wall. It is, however, a bottleneck on the route, and delays are common here. Above the wall, we continued to Karanga Camp, which is only about 3 hours away at that point. As we ascended away from Baranco Camp, vegetation becomes more sparse, mostly grasses and small shrubs. Creeks became fewer and farther in between, and the landscape becomes more dominated by rocks scattered about the volcanic dirt. There's still water here in a valley about a half an hour outside of camp, and it is actually the last place to obtain water before the summit. Camp itself is well situated to glimpse the upper part of the mountain up close. From here, the next stop is Barafu Camp, the highest camp before the summit. Now the trail leads through a landscape composed entirely of rock. We pass through an immense volcanic rock field, mostly devoid of vegetation and life, for a few hours before reaching camp. Now we are back at above 15,000 feet for the first time since Lava Tower. Weather is a bit more severe at this altitude. Instead of rain, we get a mix of rain, snow, and hail. The plan now is to set out for the summit at midnight, reaching it by sunrise. In our tents that night, we were awoken by approaching thunder. Unlike the previous nights, the snow had not let up. As the thunder approached, it was looking increasingly unlikely that a summit bid would be safe. But almost suddenly, the snow and wind stopped and the thunder faded away. Emerging from our tent just before midnight, we were greeted by a clear, starry sky, lit up by the occasional flashes of lightning from the thunderstorm as it descended farther below and away from us. The next 5 hours, we ascended the fresh snow, making new tracks up the mountainside. The sun rose just as we reached Stella Point, the last stop before the summit. No picture or video can truly replicate what it is like to experience this in person. This is a mountain I can recommend to most anybody interested in hiking and experiencing high altitude. Our guide team, Gladys Adventure, was incredible, and I've provided a link in the description for those of you who want to experience Mount Kilimanjaro and support a local business. The hike down follows the Mweka route, a more direct descent down the mountain. We stayed in Mweka camp low on the mountain that night just to break up the descent. So was it worth it to climb up Kilimanjaro in the rainy season? Absolutely. The foggy rainforest, the creeks, streams, and the shifting clouds almost make the mountain come alive during the rainy season, more so than I would expect in the dry season. A few camps we even had all to ourselves. A good chunk of each day was raining, and inevitably things would get wet, but getting up to the summit with it freshly covered in snow was really cool. And if everything I've described is what you value in a hiking experience, it's definitely worth it. I'll make a video in the future discussing how to stay dry when hiking in the rain, but in the meantime, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Mountain Beta.